Have you been experiencing internal financial struggles triggered by economic concerns? Are you feeling capped at your current income level and can't seem to realize your financial potential? Energy healer Jean Border has created an emotional freedom technique, or EFT, tapping protocol to help calm the inner voice that keeps you stressed. Claim your free copy at jeanborder.com/vow and say goodbye to those financial blockages. Welcome to another episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast, Energy Work to Better Your Business, hosted by energy healer Jean Border. It's not just about dreaming, it's about making those dreams a practical reality. Subscribe to us via your favorite network by visiting our website at www.focusedpracticaldreamer.com. Now, get ready. Your journey to success starts here.
Hello, everyone. It's your host, Jean Border, with another episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast, where we talk everything business with a slant towards the energy work, mindset, psychology to better your business. I have a special guest with me here today. Vanessa Perry is here, and we're going to talk about some really cool stuff that I think is kind of necessary when it comes to health. And I know this is not an episode that we do a lot of. We've had a few therapy type sessions, but I think it's important, especially with the state of the world right now. Mm-hmm. So in just a minute, we'll get to Vanessa. But first, I want to remind everybody, for those of you who are having financial stress in your life, if you have perhaps some decisions to make that you're feeling a little bit fearful about or have a little bit of tension in your body, go down below and click on the link for the PDF or a tapping protocol that will help you calm down your central nervous system so that you can make calm choices, calm decisions around your money. It's just simply what I'm doing right now. That's all it is. It's just tapping on some very important points in your body while you bring up some thoughts and feelings and allow your central nervous system to calm down. jeanborder.com/vow for those of you who are listening, VOW. Or just click on the link in the show notes below. And now, back to Vanessa. Hi, Vanessa. How are you?
Hey, hi. That was so wonderful. As you were tapping, I could feel it in my ground chakra. I was like, that's awesome.
Well, sometimes people start with points in different places. I always end on the top. There are so many calming points on the top of the head. And like you said, with the crown chakra, the energy is there, right? So we want you calm when we close out that protocol. But that's cool that you can feel that.
Yeah, it's like it's funny. I'm I'm trying not to touch my head.
That's okay. Go for it. Whatever works. So tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, so about me, I am an intuitive counselor. I live in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina right now. I'm a native New Englander, but I've been all up and down the East Coast. I've just kind of settled in South Carolina for now. I am a single mom to a beautiful, almost 9-year-old daughter. And so I live my life by the practices that I preach. And that just really makes my work a heck of a lot easier to do it that way. So that's kind of, I would say, like me in a nutshell as a person. And then, I'm sure we'll get into the more of the business stuff later. But yeah, I'm a fairly busy person.
Before we go there, I just have to mention this. And what do you do for exercise?
Well, I do a lot of things for exercise, but I play ice hockey any chance that I get. It's my favorite thing on earth.
You're the first guest I've had out of all my episodes that said, yes, I love to participate in the sport of ice hockey. I've never had a guest that used that as a place of joy.
Yeah, I love it. And I live right now where there isn't an ice rink, so it's a drive for me to do it. And what ends up happening is when I play in tournaments and when I play, there's so much more gratitude when I'm there than, when I used to take it for granted because it was 15 minutes away. So yeah, I love it.
Cool. So let's dive into the conversation.
Okay.
I'm curious how you got from where you were into this field that you're in now in your business, and tell the listeners what it is you do now.
Okay. Yeah, people are always wondering that because they're like, intuitive counselor, what does that even mean? Right. And then when they find out, yeah, I have a master's degree, like I've been licensed as a therapist, they're like, now I really don't get it. Like that almost confused the conversation versus, hey, you just stepped out and you use your intuition. So, I mean, the thing about it is that it's almost like it was an Oreo of intuition for my life and this counseling thing that I do. Whereas when I was younger, it was just kind of natural for me. And so the first time that I ever became a counselor was in high school. There was a group called Peer Outreach, and it was voted on by the student body, and you voted for the people that you go to when you've got problems, right? Like the people who are really good listeners or give good advice. And so that was natural for me. I never had any training at that point. And so being voted into that was, an honor in and of itself. And then we got some training. And then I thought, well, if I could do this for a job, that'd be great because it's really easy and I love doing it. So I went to school and I did all of that you're supposed to do. It was early 90s when I graduated from high school and did all this. So that was the path. If you wanted to be a therapist, that was the path. And it was just a struggle, honestly. I can tell you from that point on until I switched things on my own. It was just so it really took my intuition out of it, which clearly was my superpower at the beginning of this journey. And so I just kind of tried. I bounced around. I was in and out of the field. I would go from being a therapist to working in finance, which I mean, I don't know if you could find any two opposite ends of the
That's
spectrum.
hilarious. That's hilarious.
Right. But I would get burned out with this red tape and, diagnosis and insurance and all that. And so I would just run back to the financial field where everything just made sense. You sit down at your desk, you do what you got to do until I became pregnant with my daughter and had to leave, obviously was on maternity leave. And when it came time to go back to work, I did not want to go back to work and I did not want to put my child in daycare. So it was go time for me to create a business. And at that time, I still had that mentality of, well, if you're going to be a therapist, you've got to work in between the lines. And that's obviously not how it worked for me because it's like anything, when you're set free, it's really hard to go back in that box. And so I thought, well, if I get to create it, who says I have to do it that way? And that's kind of a really simplistic way of saying that was the inception of the intuitive counselor journey. It was still a journey. I did all of the niching and, all of the business coaching and, things that were not really, I would say, I don't want to say helpful, but they weren't really specific to my business. So it was really difficult for me. I truly had to rely on myself and my own belief systems and create this business the way that it felt like it needed to be. But now it's exactly what I love. I get to use my actual intuition, like my connection, my woo-woo connection with spirit, and allow my clients to dip into that a little bit too, and mix that with some of the things I did learn, in education and in those environments where I was providing traditional therapy. So to me, it's the best of all worlds, what I've created. So yeah, that's my journey in a nutshell. I mean, there's clearly tons of things in there, but this could take hours.
I think it's really helpful for people to understand that energy work is slowly making its way into the therapy world and the psychology world. I personally have clients who are psychologists and they use energy techniques with their patients, right?
Yes. Yep.
And there are now, most of the psychologists I work with do not want to take insurance just because of something you alluded to. It's such a hassle. They make it so difficult for you to be reimbursed. Even though theoretically they're supposed to support the person paying for insurance, in reality, they're making profit. And so the harder they can make it for you to get your money, the more money they retain, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
So that brings so much resentment on the part of the provider that a lot of the providers have said, I'm not dealing in the insurance world anymore. If you want my services, you pay me. If you have a way for your insurance to reimburse you, that's on you, but I won't be in the middle of it anymore. And a lot of those are energy people who know that people value the energy part of it just as much as they do the traditional road of helps, I'll call it.
Well, and when you think about the traditional role anyway, like the road, what is psychology? Right? Like it's all branches of, hey, that sounded good, but I've experienced this in my practice. And so now, and then that takes off, and I feel like there came a point where it got a little almost like capped off where, now there's no more theory, right? Like no more new theories are allowed. We're going to run off these same like 7 and that's how we're going to do it. And it's like, that's really weird actually. But the best part about that though is the person I think I learned the least about in school was Carl Jung. And he was the one who did all the talking about energy work and shadow. And I think there's something universal going on, but I mean, let's push him under the rug because that's not, we can't regulate that. So we don't really want that around. So as I grew in my own practice and just rediscovered more of his teachings, I thought, oh, okay, yeah. That if there were a lot more spinoffs, which there are now, of more Jungian, concepts, we would have been further along. But you're 100% right. I think I remember when I was working in the field when meditation started to be a thing, right? I mean, clearly we weren't taught the way meditation actually is. It was like, tell them to sit down and listen to this thing and clear their thoughts. And I didn't understand it. And so I was, it's embarrassing.
Nobody understands it.
Yeah. It's embarrassing to think
clear
of
your
clients.
thoughts. Okay.
Yeah.
Listen, how do I clear my thoughts as your thoughts get more and more tangled trying to clear your thoughts? I'm like, seriously?
Right. Yeah. But at the same time, you're like, okay, at least we're on some track of use your mind to do something, right? But
pay attention.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, I think most of us are just, wow, we're not going to fight, and I can't diagnose now. Like I have such a difficulty with diagnosing, and you're not going to get paid from an insurance company without that. So that was, part of it. But my way around that is I let people schedule however often they can in order to make that affordable for them. And we still do plenty of great work, and it has, worked out, I think maybe even better. Some people can't go every week. It's too much. And that's what happens in the traditional field is, oh, you're going to sign on. You got to come here every week so we can get our money.
Yep. So how did you start to grow your intuition after you shut it down for so long with your traditional training? How did your intuition start to grow again?
Well, it's a funny story. I mean, when we say shot it down, it's very fuzzy because I didn't. And I think some of my burnout was the pushback where I would be working because it's not something I wanted to turn off. So I didn't. And so I was quite frequently like the person in the office, like, you can't do that. And I was like, well, it helps. So I did, and, especially when I worked at substance abuse rehabs, I mean, passing around a piece of paper to people who are in tremendous pain because they're going through detox and having them write things down. I was like, this is awful. So we're like playing music. And I mean, I was in trouble all the time for just can't do a process group every time. I'm like, that that's what's working for them. That's what felt right when I sat down. And so I helped them today. So it was kind of always there. But when we talk about my spiritual intention when it comes to intuition, that definitely came through my own spiritual journey. um, it was separate for a while, like my work and intuitively knowing what my clients need felt very much like it must be, and air quotes, based on what I learned in school or in practice. And it wasn't until I went on my own spiritual journey with intuition to realize, oh no, that's not not everybody is doing that. That's you and some sort of spiritual connection where you're receiving information on the fly that is not from your brain. It's from somewhere else. So that was um again, like kind of went along with my spiritual journey personally, then that's ended up strengthening and really taking my business to another level.
You mentioned something that frustrates me so greatly about so many things, the medical profession being one of them, is the one size fits all protocol for everything.
Yeah.
Well, we've created this bell curve and this is the norm. And so you will fall in the norm. Well, no, I won't. I'm out here somewhere and you're treating me for something that fits these people. And I'm not even in that group and you don't care because insurance says you will follow this protocol or you will not be paid. So how is that serving the patient?
Yeah, it's not. It hardly ever does, right? Because then it's funny to have this discussion and have still the worst. Every year we say we have the worst mental health crisis ever, every year. And we wonder why, because people are not being seen as the individuals that they are. They're being treated as a, a cookie cutter program. I mean, I still have nightmares about my treatment plan book and having to just write the treatment plan, basically the same one for everybody that has a certain diagnosis. And maybe you tweaked a few things that had to do with their personal life, but it was very few, because if you went too far off the board, you're sitting with your supervisor, they're telling you what you've got to change in order for the insurance to accept it. And it was very defeating, because again, you look at people and you get into the field because you want to help people. I mean, you're not getting into it for the money, that's for sure. It's not there. But, so yeah, 100%. I think that's, in my field, and then also in the medical field, whole other can of worms, because I end up having to work with the medical field quite often, and it really makes it difficult. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm part of the change, even at the smallest level. And that's why I like to be on podcasts and be out there to say, no, I have proof that this has been working, and that some of these people that I follow that have given me inspiration, I have, I'm implementing it and it's working for these people. So let's try more people. Please try it.
It's my experience that every client I have has a different background, has a different belief system, has different experiences, has different expectations. And so I work with each client as a totally unique individual. I don't have a protocol that I apply to anybody. Whatever comes in as the root cause of whatever the heck is going on, that's what we target.
Yes. Yes.
It's not, okay, so are you doing X, Y, Z, A, B, C? You're not? Okay, then we will get you to that point. No, it's not. Everyone is different. And we lose that when we assign protocols to situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not to discount the fact that some interventions are fantastic. It's just that they're not for everybody, and that's the thing about it. And I tend to be a kind of person who looks for ways to be compassionate. And so I've done a lot of trying to be compassionate with the field and thinking, I've been in some situations and I've been in some conversations with some really poor providers, right? Who need to have a leash because they're not they're harming more than helping, right? Like, because they're not really understanding their role. And so I get that. But at the same time, I'm like, that doesn't mean you put a leash on everybody. You've got to just have a better way of vetting people or guiding them or teaching them about themselves so that they can learn who they are and be better counselors or therapists. So, yeah, I've tried to do that lovingly, to say, well, there's a reason why they originally started to regulate it. And then, it went off with insurance and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I sometimes I don't even know that I'm using psychology tools where, somebody will go, do you use CBT? And I'm like, no. And I'm like, yes, all day long you use CBT, but you don't call it CBT because it's sometimes reframing thoughts. It's sometimes, catastrophizing on purpose so that we can just figure out what we're going to do when the worst thing happens and work backwards from there to create trust. It's like the concepts aren't always bad, but when we use them as that cookie cutter, then we're just doing ourselves and our clients a disservice. So I love that you do the same thing, because sometimes people are like, oh, that's so wild and irresponsible. And it's like, well, it's working for my clients. So I guess wild and irresponsible is good for some.
Well, see, I have a very deep-seated distrust of the medical profession being able to cure anything.
Yeah.
They can treat broken bones really well. Trauma medicine, absolutely. If you get in a car wreck, go to the hospital. They're great at that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But if it's something that I think of as squishy, they don't know how to find the cause, and so they can't cure you. I had migraines from the time I was teeny tiny up until I got into energy work and was able to just let them go. All they knew is I had peaks and valleys in my brain waves that shouldn't be there. So they would give me medication. I tried so many medications with so many bad side effects,
Yeah.
And it was just, well, let's try this. Let's try this. Because they didn't know what to do. Right. So being really, I'll say nice neurologists and neurosurgeons or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I know about the head, so let me give you stuff that we know will impact the way the head works. But they don't look at full body. They don't look at emotional responses, emotional causes. They don't look at history. They do look now at stress to see what kind of stress you're under. Sure. But, oh yeah, so lighten the stress in your world.
Yeah. Or here's a pill that will help you feel less stressed at the end of the day.
Yeah. Just take some Prozac so you don't feel anything anymore.
Yes.
That medication is not helping you. Well, let's add this one to it and see if the combination of this plus this plus this plus this will have any effect. And by that point, you're dead and you feel no emotions, right? You don't enjoy anything anymore.
Yeah.
But hey,
I always tell people that your brain is going to end up being stronger. Your soul is going to end up being stronger. And that's why you'll still have people on that cocktail and they're like, something's wrong. Like, I know, because your soul is always going to be stronger. It might even in the temporary work, right? Because it's altering the brain chemicals, but our body is wired to go to homeostasis. So it's going to get used to whatever it is, and it's going to overpower it because the spirit wants to be heard. Your soul wants to be heard so that you will release that and really be able to be yourself, and I really believe that. And it's funny when you were talking about the side effects, because this has come up a lot with me recently with clients, but then also in my own I'm obsessive about this. Like this is my job, but I love it. So outside of my job, I am watching things and listening to podcasts and things like that. So, but I've been talking a lot about the placebo effect because a lot of people don't know about it. And I'm like, you're kidding. So you have no idea that the medication that doctor prescribed to you has a certain amount of people within the trial group that received a sugar pill and had results. And they're like, no, like, yeah, well, you can't have a valid test without those people. And as far as not that I've seen every single, test or trial, but I've seen the placebo effect happen in most of the ones that I've seen, which means that there are people who are doing it with their brain. come on, they weren't anointed when they came out into the world of being like, you have the brain power to heal yourself. Just you, right? Just you with this disease has the ability to do that. So, we've been talking a lot about that and about how the energy of our body and how we can influence it in a positive way or in a negative way. And again, like information people don't have, but when they have it and they really start to think about it and start to use it, it works.
A lot of people talk about the placebo effect in a negative way. Oh, well, that's just the placebo effect. Well, exactly. That's your body working the way it was created to work. That's your body healing because you told it to heal. You expected to heal. So it does exactly what you expect. If you expect to get sicker, it's going to make that happen for you. If you expect to get well, it's going to make that happen for you. Now, not in all cases. It can't, if you get your arm cut off and you're just bleeding out, you're going to bleed out. It is what it is, right? But there's so much that we can do if we pay attention. Agreed. And if we direct the body, this is what I expect of you. And some of my clients I'm not a medical professional. I don't get in the middle of I don't diagnose, I don't treat, I don't provide medication. I don't get in the middle of anything between you and your doctor, right? However, I can make some suggestions to you so that you can create better conditions for your body so that it can do what it was created to do. And so
without side effects.
Yeah. So sometimes people come to me with things like tumors. And so but whatever their history is, we find out something that fits with their story. Mm-hmm. So if they're familiar with the construction world and contracts for different things like that, well, maybe you have a construction crew come in and start dismantling the tumor. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. And you give them their contract orders before you go to sleep at night so that while you're asleep, when your body is calm and in healing mode, it is now deconstructing the tumor. And the crew comes behind it and takes those pieces of the tumor away and flushes them out through your system, just the way your body was created to deal with things that shouldn't be there. If you cut your hand and you keep it clean, it's going to heal itself. Yep. Same thing happens inside the body as what happens outside the body if you allow it and expect it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes people think, especially with certain people who are giving these stories, like Dr. Joe Dispenza for one, he's always giving the stories of people healing, but the average skeptic is like, well, he's just trying to get you to buy something. Well, I've seen it happen to people that were not under my care, and I don't even do that, So for me, sharing those stories of my friend who healed a tumor in her liver, and I had nothing to do with it, I'm just sharing as an inspirational story. Well, maybe you can listen to that one then instead. But, the worst case scenario is that you quote unquote waste time trying. That's the thing about it, is there's no side effect to trying energy work other than maybe a little bit of disappointment if you have, if your expectations are a bit high, for the first session.
And I tell people, don't stop what you're doing. Continue everything the medical profession tells you to do. However, you might want to check in occasionally and see if your medication needs to be adjusted. Maybe you don't need such a high dosage of something, or maybe you can do now without one of the medications. And over time, maybe you've cut back a lot on the medications that you're taking if you continue the energy work, right?
Yeah. And the good, bad news about the medical field right now is that we keep having like recalls and, I have a lot of clients who are having difficulty getting some of their medications, so they're a little bit more desperate to try different things. And so I feel like that gives us, who work in this field an opportunity to just say, hey, try this. No side effects. No, there's no shortage whatsoever because it's you're the person who's doing just try, just see, try to believe in it, try to believe me that I have no ill intent for you. and that the small financial gain, and I mean small financial gain for me, I rely on that working in order for you to tell somebody that it worked so that I can feed my child, So there's a completely different connectivity to why I would even do this work, why I would even suggest that stuff. So, yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I feel like a lot of business owners and a lot of, people in my field specifically are becoming, more aware of all of that stuff, the medical field kind of being a little bit, iffy right now and saying, well, how can I support my clients? And I'm like, oh, you could try this, or try to go out on your own, right? Because you'll be happier, but you'll also have the freedom to treat your clients however you have seen that's outside of the box that could be helpful.
So, what are some circumstances in which people might come to you?
So I'm lucky in that, like, again, when I was starting this business journey, I tried everything. I mean, I was like, fertility is something close to my heart. I'll be a fertility counselor. And I got some clients, but I was like, it's so one dimensional. I don't really want to do that. I have ADHD, first of all. So I love multiple things happening at the same time. So it's my favorite thing that I'll sit down with 4 different people in the day with 4 different stories. Can be exhausting, but is exhilarating at the same time. But what I do know is that the common thing that people come to me for, the beacon that I believe, I'm putting out there, is giving people permission to be who they are, giving people permission to sit down and wonder if there's anything else, because we're just in the safe little receptacle. You don't have to do anything outside of here. And I tell people this all the time. You can dream in this space, and 10 minutes later you can take it back. I don't care. I'm not going to hold you to it. I'm not going to go, well, you're so wishy-washy. It's just, hey, how did that journey happen? What do we think happened? What's your little soul guy talking about right now? So the kinds of people that come to me tend to be ones who are curious about the spirituality part of it, because that's pretty open. That's who I am. But I think a lot of people really are looking for some place where they can feel safe and heard and have true empathy and not feel like somebody's there to diagnose them or even fix them. Like, I feel that most people come to me because they understand that I'm there to empower them to create, not to fix, not to make you feel bad about anything you've ever done, but to just go, well, what do you want to do now? I'll help you do that.
Cool. You said something really powerful, and it comes up frequently. People are so afraid to do certain things. One of them is to say no.
Yeah.
And so I find myself saying those words, you have my permission to say no. Not that I have any impact on their life at all. I mean, other than that they're coming to me for impact, right?
Right.
But just me saying those words somehow can be freeing for them. Mm-hmm. That someone external to them says, you're okay to make any decision you want to make.
Right. Right. Because their programming is from other people who have told them, right? And we tend to go off into the world and find people who kind of justify that belief, right? So then before we know it, if we're a people pleaser, we look around, there's a bunch of people who are really benefiting from our people pleasing. And so then when we decide to stop doing it, we have a lot of people who are really not happy that we're not people pleasing anymore, right? And so it can feel like a huge shock to the system. So having a safe place and one person who is outside of the norm saying, oh yeah, you can totally do that. Like, I can? What happens if I do? Tell me about other people who've done this and how they didn't fall off the face of the earth. I think that's the true value of a space like that, is that permission, even if you don't do it right away, it's the permission to get into the energy of it, right? And we talk about the energy work stuff, but the energy that shifts just from spoken word sometimes is like all the power that we need in that space of All right, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it because I feel like I can, and I'll come running right back here to lick my wounds if I have wounds, right? But yeah, I mean, it's definitely letting people explore something that maybe on the outside world seems a little bit unsafe.
Sometimes they just want someone to listen without judgment.
Yeah.
And when they give a random situation, well, what if I go and I'm not really comfortable? Well, then you leave. Can I do that? Yes, you can do that.
Right.
I give you
What will
my
happen if I do
permission
that?
to
Well,
leave.
what do you think?
Well, how would I do that? Well, say, something's come up, I've got to run. That's it. But don't I have to tell them what it is? No, you don't. You get to choose. Choice and decision are huge, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes we forget that we have that power.
Yeah. Well, because we're not really bred to have that power, and not to get that go there, but we're not really in a society that benefits from people having individual power. So we're not really bred to have individual power. It's something that we have to like give ourselves, the gift of. And sometimes, our parents try to do it, but at the same time, they're very much aware of the world that we live in too. So it's a delicate balance of here are some things that maybe you're not going to be able to, change. So there are some parameters that we'll live in that aren't really true to us, but here's how to counterbalance that with these ways that you can live as who you are and do the things that you want to do.
Talk to me about how you work with relationships.
So relationships, relationships are everything. So there's romantic relationships, there's friendships, there's a relationship to self, there's relationship to business.
Well, okay, let's go with business. Since we're mostly a sort of a business podcast. Talk to me about when people come to you and they're having business relationship issues. Well, how does that work?
Well, I mean, it's everything is belief system, right? Like you said it, I agree. Everything is belief system. So we're kind of we start from our pain point and we go backwards. What is your pain point? What is your expectation? And what is your belief? Is kind of like a simplistic way to kind of put it, and then we dig in there and there's always all kinds of goodies in there to just dismantle and rebuild. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, they want to be in business for different reasons too. I think that there's part of that. And I've obviously started a business myself, and I have a few clients that have started businesses, some more successfully than others, and some of that is because of expectation, some of that is because of education, and a lot of it is belief systems, right? And trust, right? Trust in themselves or trust in others. So we first, kind of have to know why we're doing it. And when we talk about our why, I can remember when I talked about my why, when people would say, hey, you got to find your why. And I'd say, my why is my daughter, right? Because I didn't know, I didn't understand what that meant. I just thought, well, yeah, I want to create a good life for her, right? No, it's so much deeper than that, right? Like it's mostly freedom. Right? Like as I discovered, I just really love freedom and I'm very rebellious. So I don't like to feel not free. So that had to become the theme of how I created my business. What feels free today? Does it feel like I only work from 10 to 2? Okay, then I've got to do that or else I'm going to feel not free. And that's my relationship with my business is how does this create freedom for me so that I don't ever feel not free? And that is time most of the time for me. For some people, it's financial freedom. And so we have to know that relationship that they have to the reason for business in order to know what tools we're going to throw at it to make it successful.
When you were talking about your why, the only thing that came to mind was the 7-level deep exercise. You said the why is my daughter. But then the more I worked on it, I realized, no, but why is your daughter? Why is it your daughter? Because of this. And why is that true? Because of this. And why is that true? And eventually you got down to freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a useful exercise for anyone. What is it? Determining what do you want? So often we're focused on what we don't want.
Yeah.
That's what we draw towards us because that's all we look at. We don't define and choose what do you want.
Yeah. And let it be movable. That was one of the things that I needed to learn, because what ended up happening was I never thought I could have my own business. I mean, it just felt so crazy. So when I achieved it and felt free, I was like, well, now what? I didn't dream beyond that. I had nothing. I mean, literally, I had nothing beyond that. I thought, well, now you made it, quote unquote. It doesn't feel good to just sit here. What do I want to do otherwise? And it really more things came into play of what belief systems are there. What does success mean to me? What does it mean now in the future? What does it mean to put together a dream? And I did find that I had a lot of programming that wasn't mine. I'm over there signing up for master classes about being a multimillionaire. And I'm like, I don't think I want to be a multimillionaire. I don't think that that's what I want to do. I don't think the life that I'm dreaming of requires that actually when I sit down. Okay, that made everything way more bite-sized for me, but I had to take away well, this is what success is, and this is what it needs to look like, and this is what security and freedom looks like, and really bring it back to, well, what does security and freedom look like to you? Because that's all you need to know. That's how you're going to get that personal achievement that you want, that we're all here looking for.
And that's something that 2 points in there, a lot of people don't pay attention to is they're so focused on the goal that they don't look beyond it to see what will happen once you reach the goal. So you get there and you're on top of that mountain and you're like, okay. And so therefore, because we are created internally, we're always looking for that next thing, that next moment of joy, that next growth point, right? And when we only focus on that goal, well, what happens after you get there?
Mm-hmm.
And you're left feeling lost when you get there. And that whole, is that all that there is? That is an old song. Yep. If that's all there is, that there is, my friend, let's just keep dancing. And that's the joy. It's the keep dancing part.
Yeah. Yes, keep creating. What does creating mean? It may not look the same. And that's where I mean about like bendable. I can remember somebody that I very much I follow them and I admire them. And one day he said, well, I might not do this forever. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm going to do this forever. This is my calling. This is the thing. And I really had to sit with that for a minute to go, that sounds very, very limiting, actually, when you say it like that. What else could be there for you, Vanessa? There might be some things you've never seen before that might light you up also. You've got to let that happen. You've got to, explore more things. We are creators, all of us. I really believe we are all creators internally. It's just a difference in the things that we create. But yeah, without journey, we do feel lost. We need some journey, but that's what ends up happening is I think a lot of people turn that into a negative thing, right? And so they just create more strife journey versus creative fun journey. And that's the difference, right? Between people who are living, well and feeling good and people who are not.
And if you had just focused on what you were learning with your traditional therapy, you would still be doing that and you'd be miserable. So
I'd still be bouncing back. I really believe I would just be bouncing back and forth because I did it for probably 10 years.
And so that whole, well, you have to keep doing that. No, you don't. You can choose. This year, this is my focus. In 3 years, oh, I have a different focus. I'm interested in this now. And all of that is okay. But if you choose to stay with the one thing and you're still juiced by it, great.
Yes.
Doesn't always happen though.
Yeah.
But we put expectations on ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we feel guilt that, oh, I'm not doing this. And that I thought that was my calling. So I've got to stick with this. Well, no, you don't. You've grown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always tell people when we make our decisions, we make them with the information that we have. So it would
Exactly.
stand to reason that when we get more information, it would be possible to make a different decision, you know, but that's a choice. Right. So if I come across something else that I'm like, oh my gosh, I really like that, and I never do it, that's a choice at that point, because now I've received new information and I've decided to make the same decision with that information. I may feel less fulfilled. And I think it happens to a lot of people, you know, of because we do have a lot of societal programming that is being, I feel like, being broken. You know, the younger generations came out saying no, like, to everything, which is shaking things up. But they're like, you know what? Isn't loyalty to me working for you for 15 years and feeling like crap? I'm not going to do it. I'll work for you for a year. And if you start treating me like crap, I'm going to stop doing it. And, you know, and what? That's not what we do here in this society, right? That makes you wishy-washy. That means that you don't know what you want. That means that you're disloyal. That, you know, there's all these programmings that we all have, you know, in us from, you know, from society itself, that make it really hard for people to make, you know, other decisions. And that's why I have so much empathy for it. When people sit in my space and then it takes them forever to make a different decision, I'm not upset with them about it by any means. You know, it's, they'll say, you must be sick of me. I'm never, because I understand that it's journey.
Back when COVID thing was starting, my business is totally online. I'm totally remote. So COVID had no impact on my income level at all.
Mm-hmm.
But parents would also have their kids come to me, right? Because they had, it was such a stressful time and they had no interaction with their peers. They weren't learning how to communicate. They weren't learning how to interact. Some of the kids that would talk to me didn't even know how to interact with their parents anymore. They would just stay in their room all day because of the fear in the house. You know, it was craziness. But some of the kids were getting ready for college, but they didn't know what to call, what to select for a major, because that's the rest of their life, because that was the parental pressure, right, from a different generation. And I'm like, well, you have to realize right now the stats are saying you're going to have at least 7 different careers before you officially quit working. I am? Yeah, you are. So you don't have to choose this is the rest of my life. Choose this is right now. And if I don't like that career, I can go into something else. And so what's important is that you get that piece of paper that says you graduated with some kind of a degree that gets your foot in the door, unless it's a specialty like engineering or nurse or doctor that has such specific requirements, right?
Right.
But if it's a generic general business degree, you can use that anywhere. You get your foot in the door and you learn, because they want you to learn their way anyway once you get into a company. But that took so much pressure off them to understand you will have choices and it will be your decision to stay here or to go in a new direction with your life.
Yeah. And it's hard, right? Like, because when it's even, you know, I just had this conversation with somebody earlier today where I was talking about, you know, just brain development. It's like as a whole, we've learned so much about it that when you're 18 years old, your executive function part of your brain is not fully formed. So it's wild to think that we would expect an 18-year-old to be able to make that kind of a decision when until you're 25, that part of your brain isn't even like solid yet. So yeah, no wonder we are always like, why are they doing that? Well, yeah, because they don't know. For one, their brain isn't fully developed. They have also not been out into the world. How can you, when your world has been so structured and so small? You know, I went to high school in a small town. It was regional. There were 6 towns that went to my high school, and still there was only 120 people in my class, you know, so small. I had no idea what else was out there in the world. I knew what everybody did in my town and maybe what the guidance counselor told me was possible. You know, it was because, you know, also was before the internet, which makes me feel like a dinosaur. But literally, I didn't have the internet when I was a kid. So, you know, we really didn't no, the scope of knowledge really wasn't there. So, there was a lot of that belief system that's there. And I love that you do that because I think it's important to be able to say, no, you can change your mind. Yes, it's a very expensive first try, right? Because with the college thing, yep, we kind of created this society where, 4 years, 2 to 4 years, let's do it. But everything after that, is really like, oh, you'll figure it out. It will be okay. I promise, and really having people trust you to see that and be able to, show some examples of other people. We have plenty of examples now. That's the beauty of the internet. We can look and see the people who've changed their careers at 55 years old and lived a really great back half of their life. Awesome. How do we do that at 30? Or learn that even at 20 so that we are living all the best life that we have because we continuously allow ourselves to do that.
Well, we're coming up near the end of our time together. Let's talk about how people can find you.
So people can find me. My website is thepsychgym.com, psych psych gym.com. And I can be emailed at vanessa@thepsychgym.com. My Facebook and my Instagram are not on brand, so it's a little bit different. I was joking earlier, like I'll probably streamline that at some point, but for right now, I'm not. I can be found on Instagram at CSEA.stars.psych, again, PSYCH. And my Facebook is Vanessa Perry, Intuitive Counselor. That's the easiest one to remember. But yeah, I can be reached on any of those platforms at any time.
And if you don't remember all that, just click on the link in the show notes below.
Yes, I'm very appreciative of that because it is a little all over the place right now.
And you had an offer for our listeners?
I do not remember which offer that was.
Okay, well, I'll be your advertisement. For anybody who would like to experience a session with Vanessa, she's offering 20% off to our listeners.
Okay. I couldn't remember. And I'm going to be honest with you. I couldn't remember if it was 10 or 20. And I really didn't want to misquote. I really didn't want to misquote myself. But yeah, 20% off because I feel like sometimes if you already have heard something and you're ready to dive into it, sometimes that little nudge really will make you feel like it's divinely divine intervention. So yeah.
Cool. So unfortunately, we're going to need to wrap up.
I know. I could do this for hours.
Yeah. Do you happen to have any final thoughts? Any takeaways?
I think the thing that I've always, that I think I was put on this earth to spread is, you are worth this work. You are worth the work. Your life is worth the work that feels like it might be difficult, but I can guarantee, and that's a word, right? I can guarantee that if you allow yourself to go on this journey, at some point you catch that fire and everything changes and you feel more like yourself than you've ever felt and you become unbothered by so many things. And that alone makes it worth it.
Cool. I agree. But cool.
It's beautiful over here. Come on.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for being here. I really enjoyed our conversation. And, it's right in my wheelhouse. So like-minded people, it's so nice to have people on the show with totally different experiences than me that have come to the same point in the journey. Absolutely. For whatever reason.
Yep. I love it. I could, like I said, I could do this all day and I'm always appreciative when, again, I feel like we're put on this earth to do this. And so when we combine powers and combine networks and, shine that light a little bit brighter, we're doing the work, we're helping.
Cool. And on that note, we'll close out our time together. Yes. As a reminder, every Tuesday a new episode drops. So be sure to tune in. I'm so thrilled that you've taken the time to spend your time with us. This is Jean Border with the Focused Practical Dreamers Journey podcast. Until next time.
We trust you enjoyed this episode of the Focused Practical Dreamers Journey podcast, Energy Work to Better Your Business, hosted by energy healer Jean Border. Remember to visit our website at www.focusedpracticaldreamer.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Focused Practical Dreamers Journey.